Alrighty, Q&A time. Point blank range. What is a point blank range? Point blank range is the distance over which a certain firearm can hit a target without the need to compensate for bullet drop. So in short, a target presents itself, you only have to point the crosshair at the center of the target and fire out to a certain range, and you will still hit the target without having to compensate for bullet drop. Point blank range works the best with a duplex reticle. If you don't know what a duplex reticle is, a duplex reticle is just a simple cross on your sights. On our screen here we have our rifle. Now, as we all know, the axis of the bore is going to come straight out, and it's going to be higher than what our target is, because obviously because of gravity and all that sort of shit, the bullet is going to start dropping. So it's going to jump slightly, but then it's going to start dropping again, so therefore the axis of the bore has to be higher than the point of impact. All right, then we have the line of sight. The line of sight is obviously pointing directly at the target, and the line of sight is going to cross the axis of the bore at some point. All right, we then have the trajectory of our round. So we have where our round, because it's going to jump as it leaves the muzzle, which is intermediate ballistics, it's then going to cross our line of sight, it's going to go above our line of sight, and then it's going to come back down onto our line of sight. Now, obviously, whenever you see these diagrams, they look really, really aggressive, and the rise here is usually very high. I try to make this one as low as possible because people always get thrown off by how high a round actually goes. I'll explain a little bit more in a second. So just now we're all over the terminology: axis of the bore, line of sight, and trajectory of the round. First 0, second 0. Now to calculate your point blank 0 for your rifle. All right, I'm going to leave the link for this in the description. This is the one that I use. It's pretty good. It's very simple. A few things to explain about it though. So you will need to find out the drag function for your round. You can find that on the website for whatever ammunition you're using. And they're G's, G function. Most rounds are going to be a G1, but you may have something else, so find out what you are, put that in there, and you'll also have to find out your ballistic coefficient, which will be listed with your ammunition data as well. All right, initial velocity, this is also known as muzzle velocity, and yeah, so this is in feet per second, so for my 308, that is 2840, firing a 165 grain Aussie Outback projectile. So we then have our sight height. Now you need to measure the height of the center of your sight off your axis of the bore. So to calculate our sight height, we have our rifle here, and what we're going to do is we're going to draw an imaginary line straight through our bore, which is going to be this line here, and then we draw an imaginary line through our sight, which is here. The distance between the two is going to be our sight height. That's just our height over bore of our sight. One method you can use is you can measure the width of your barrel, half that, and then do some other funky bullshit. The way I did it and the way I usually do it is pretty simple. I would put a ball brush on a single rod, put it into the bore so the rod is sitting center without the bolts. I'm using this part here, and then run a ruler straight up to center of my sight. That's the easiest way. That's the way I do it. You can, at this end, just go roughly center. Your wood is usually sitting center of your rifle anyway, or of your bore, depending on your rifle. But yeah, you can run it there to center of objective lens. Either way, that's just how you measure that. There's probably a million videos on how to measure sight height elsewhere, but in a nutshell, that's what you're doing. We've measured our sight height. On my rifle, it's 1.5 inches. And then we pick our target size. Now, the kill zone on a Samba deer is roughly about 8 inches. You could probably get away with 10 inches as well, which is pretty fucking big. And this is going to be the maximum circle that we're going to use, which then becomes a radius once we do our calculation. So I picked 4 inches. I did have it at one point at 6 inches, which gave me a maximum height of 9.5 centimeters at 100 meters roughly. But then because I started shooting smaller game with the same rifle, I didn't want to have that big of a difference, which shortened my point blank 0, but then made it not rise so high. So I used 4 inches, which means I can still shoot foxes, goats, pigs, deer, all with the same thing. I don't have to worry about, is that round going to be too high for that target height? So, a fox is in body size is fairly short. If you had a a 9.5 rise and it was at 100 metres and you aimed on, you would potentially put the round over the top of its back. But if it's 4 inches, which means it's going to be half of that, 2 inches, 5 centimetres, it's not going to go over the top of the target. So I'm rabbiting on a bit too much on that. Anyway, you type that shit in, you hit calculate point blank range, and it's going to give you this data here. So near zero is 30 yards, far zero, 206 yards. Your minimum PBR is usually going to be 0, don't worry about that. And maximum PBR, so point blank range, maximum is going to be 241 yards. Its sight in at 100 yards is 1.88 inches high. You take all that data and you convert it into metric because fuck the imperial system. And then let's move back over to this. So I'm going to get rid of the axis of the bore because it's just going to clutter things up. So we're worried about line of sight and our trajectory of our rounds. So because I converted it all to the metric system, right, the first 0, so this point here where the round coincides or crosses the line of sight, for mine is going to be 27 metres. So that's where I sight my rifle into. 27 metres, I shoot, put a group in, and that's where I sight into initially. Here's a sweet picture, I'll flash this up, of picture I posted on Instagram once I did this 0. Pretty fucking good group, pretty happy with that. But that is only 27 metres, so don't get too fucking crazy about it. Now, one thing to be wary of, once you've done your initial sighting it in, so once I decided in at 27 metres, I then pushed it out to 100 metres. I think I actually did 106 metres because I knew that's exactly where my highest point was going to be because I used a ballistic calculator. But it's always important to sight it in at a longer range as well, knowing what your height over is going to be, purely because of spin drift. When you fire the rounds, because most of the rifles that we have a right hand twist in the rifling, the round, because of the Magnus effect, is going to be pushed over to the right of your line of sight. That's the Magnus effect. Look that up on YouTube. It's pretty fucking cool. Spin drift, the round is spinning off axis, off your line, to the direction the rifling is grooved. So make sure you sighted in initially, so 27 metres, and then I went into 106 and made sure it was hitting 5 centimetres high because that's what I knew it was going to hit at because I used a ballistic calculator and the website I just showed you before. Right, then we have our second 0, so where the bullet then drops, recrosses the line of sight. For my 0, my rounds on my rifle is going to be 188 metres. And this here is going to be 106. At 106 metres is my maximum height. That's where my round reaches its max height, which is for my rifle, and this 0 is 5 centimetres above the line of sight. It travels along that for about 4 or 5 metres, according to my ballistics calculator. I think it's from roughly 106 metres to 110 or 111 metres, and then it'll start to drop again, and then it will drop back down to line of sight at 188 metres. Now, obviously, after max height to second 0 is going to be a shorter distance than from muzzle to max height because of how bullets fly. That's just ballistics. All right, so then if you imagine that this is inside a tunnel, so I've got 2 lines we're going to draw here. So dotted line at the bottom is the line that it is going to go past. So for this one, it's going to be 5 centimetres below the line of sight, and then the top one is 5 centimetres above the line of sight. So if you imagine that as a tunnel, your rounds are going to fall within the tunnel at all times. Once it leaves the tunnel, you're outside of your max point blank 0. At this point here, where the round leaves our little tunnel, is 220 metres. So if the target is after 220 metres, I then have to apply a holdover and or aim off to get the round to hit the target. Everyone happy with that? I think that's a pretty good explanation. All right. But no one really, this always trips people up because you don't really think about shooting in this linear sight-on view. So let's have a look at it in a way that you're going to understand a little bit better. So here we have a duplex reticle. All right, this red dot here is your line of sight. Obviously it's the center, that's where you're looking, that's your line of sight. And the first blue dot here is going to be the point of impact at the highest point. So for my rifle and my 0, at 106 metres, it is going to be hitting there. Now this is not to scale. It's probably actually going to be on this reticle, depending on how far you zoomed in. It's probably actually going to be a lot closer to the red. It's not actually a big move on your sight. And then, you know, at 220 meters, it's going to be hitting there. Once again, not to scale. So that just puts it in a bit more perspective of your round rising and then falling past your line of sight. Yeah, let's hammer this home a little bit more. Right, here we have a picture of a deer. We are going to put that onto the deer. So as you can see, line of sight is aiming directly at just above the shoulder blade there, or just at the shoulder blade there. Our maximum height, so at 106 meters, the round is going to hit just high there, and at 220 meters, it's going to hit just low. So it's not actually, you don't have to apply any aim off, and a lot of people, you know, will, especially if they're novice shooters, are going to look at the target and go, oh, you know, the target's a bit further away, I'm going to do a massive aim off. So they might do something like this and put the bottom, this part here of their big post at the kill point. Now, let's say, for instance, it was 100 meters away. Our point of impact is probably going to clip the top of the deer here, or go straight over the top of it. So that's why we don't want to be applying aim offs if we don't know where a round's going to fall. If we do a point blank zero, we aim at the same point no matter what the range is until it's past our maximum point, and we know we're going to hit within the kill zone. That's the whole idea behind point blank zero, and that's why we do it. I hope that's clarified point blank zero for you, and I hope my explanation was not shithouse. If you've got any questions about anything related to this sort of stuff, hit it in the comments. I'll try to get to it. I'll try to answer pretty much any question I get, as long as I see the question. So feel free to ask me some questions. I will do more videos in this format on screen capture, because it seems to be a lot easier to do and a lot easier to explain than me sitting on the couch waffling shit. Anyway, have a good one, and I'll catch you later. Hooroo.